If you were a part of last year's Academy, you will know that those were an absolute unmitigated disaster. Why, hello again, endurance nerds. It's been a minute, okay? Several minutes since I've made a video.
It's been 84 years.
I know, another protracted absence and more YouTube excuses. I didn't die, I didn't quit YouTube. I did get promoted early this year, and that just came with it a number of new responsibilities, new routines, trying to find my bearings with different direct reports, just really upending my professional life and taking on something pretty new to me. So I had to prioritize work over some of the things that I find more fun, like making videos here on YouTube. So hopefully now that I've kind of come into my own and created a better routine for myself, and let's face it, the weather's starting to turn, and it's going to be less enticing for me to go out there and more enticing for me to sit here and share with you guys. I can be a little bit more regular with my publishing here. And there are some other reasons why I was absent, some struggles I had, nothing major, no health concerns, don't be concerned about anything like that, but they are germane to this channel, and I would like to share them with you guys in the coming weeks, because I think it might be helpful for some of you as we enter the winter season, and you may struggle with the same things as well. But that is a topic for another video. Today I want to talk about Zwift Academy Road. Yes, it is that time of the year again. For those of you who have been around for a while, it's almost September. I cannot even believe it. In a couple weeks from now, you guys are going to have kids going off to school. It's just unbelievable how time flies when you're busy, and of course the summer always seems to be far too short. So it is that time of the year for Zwift Academy Road, and for the past several years I've been running a series on the Zwift Academies where I talk about the program in general. I go through the workouts and give you kind of the intellectual exercise of talking about the benefits, the different energy systems. I go through the workouts myself and give you some practical feedback, what went well, what didn't go well, things that I learned from the workouts, even as a person who has been doing this for a number of years, some potential strategies or tips and tricks to get you through the finish line strong for each of those workouts. And over the years, viewers at all levels of riding ability and experience have given me pretty positive feedback on these videos, saying that they've helped them get through the Academy more seamlessly, more efficiently. So I wanted to bring the series back again this year, and hopefully I can help you guys out, because I really do think it's a great program to be involved with. So what is the Zwift Academy? Zwift Academy is going to be running this year from September 12th to October 9th. Now, Zwift Academy, very much like a lot of the other series and campaign events that Zwift has made available, is very simply a fixed period of time and a number of deliverables that you have to complete within that period of time to get completion credit or some kind of unlock. In this case with the Academy, instead of being focused around group rides or riding certain courses or different climbing deliverables, this is centralized around fitness and structured training. So what you're really accomplishing in the Academy is completion of a training block to build your fitness, to learn more about training, and the underpinning of this program is actually to recruit for pro contenders. There are actual pro contracts on the line from the key sponsor, Canyon, and their two pro continental teams, Canyon SRAM for the women and Alpecin-Deceuninck this year for the men. So there are contracts on the line, not just like your go to Disneyland type of prize where you go get to have fun and hang out with the pros for a little while, a true professional contract. For the people who win these contests, it becomes their job, and it's on them to train and test their mettle against other pros to get new contracts and to remain in the pro peloton for years to come. It is a pretty outstanding opportunity for those younger riders or riders that do not necessarily have the exposure or the coaches available to get that kind of notoriety and to be recruited to the pro peloton. Zwift makes this a lot more attainable to people who might not have that same level of access. So through a series of completion through the Academy, as well as some semifinals and finals, every year they have selected two pro athletes, one from the men's and one from the women's field, to move on into the pro ranks. I think that is a really cool premise, and everybody's working on the same workouts more or less. So even if you're not going for that pro contract, you know that you're doing the same workouts as those people who are going towards the pro contract. So the unlocks and the completion that you get still carries with it a pretty high level of status. You have to do a pretty good amount of work to get those unlocks, and people tend to wear them with pride. So the Academy is a popular event. It still stands as the most popular event on Zwift in terms of people who sign up to participate. I think that's for a number of reasons. Obviously the pro contract being one of those reasons. Number two, it seems to align itself with when the weather starts to turn, gets a little bit colder, gets a little bit wetter here in the northern hemisphere. The days are getting a little bit shorter, kids are back in school, so it's a little bit more convenient for people to get on the road this time of the year. And of course, just the status that comes with completing a more difficult campaign. People want to be involved. But let's talk more in detail about what the program is. And I think the best best way to do that is to compare 2021 to 2022, because there have been some substantial changes between the 2 years. If you didn't participate in the program last year, you can still follow along. I'll be pretty detailed in my comparison, but if you did, you may be happy to see some pretty awesome changes between last year and this year in terms of execution, and hopefully a lot of those hurdles and missteps that we faced last year have been eliminated for 2022. So let's talk about some of the key differences here. The first difference I want to highlight is the most major one, and I have mixed opinions on this, but you may have noticed when I shared the dates that the time frame for the Academy has been shortened drastically, in fact by half. Historically, the Academy has been 8 weeks. It has been 8 weeks since 2016, if my memory serves me correctly. This year, it is only 4 weeks. So let's talk about the positives that come with that. A 4-week program is a lot easier for riders to commit to, right? If you're trying to look and follow along for 8 weeks with conflicts and kids going back to school and sporting events and all of that stuff that you have to do in your normal adult life, 8 weeks is a tall ask for a lot of people, especially if you're looking to participate in the group events and the way that they have them scheduled. It can be really frustrating to try to accommodate those events in your real life. Condensing this down to 4 weeks is a lot more straightforward. People can either participate or they can't. You look at the date range, is there a way that I can get those events done within those 4 weeks? And you know in advance whether or not you can do it, versus the 8 weeks. Things can change in that 8-week period of time, which might make it a little bit more difficult to complete. So from an adherence and a community completion perspective, I think that this year will show the greatest number of completions per signups in the history of the program. And I think that that is a positive thing. Another benefit to the 4-week format is that the number of deliverables that you have, that is the number of workouts that you have to do to complete the program. You know, last year it was 10 over the course of 8 weeks. And if you do the math on that, well, that's really pretty much 1 workout per week. There were 2 recovery rides in there, which are pretty much a nothing burger that you can throw in anywhere. But in terms of trying to make gains from a training block perspective, doing 1 high intensity workout per week is not going to elicit appreciable gains for most riders out there. Now, if you're brand new to cycling, you will definitely see some improvement over a 4-week block just by adding stimulus in general. But for most of you who are watching this video who are invested enough in Zwift that, you know, you are watching videos about it, obviously the barrier to entry to buy a trainer, most people who are doing that are at the high level of the beginner range into the intermediate or even advanced range. So you probably have some endurance built up, some capability built up, and 1 workout per week might not elicit the same type of gains that you would expect to see for the difficulty of the workouts involved. So by forcing the now 8 different workouts over the course of 4 weeks, now you're doing 2 per week, which is pretty standard in terms of a periodized plan to have 2 intensity workouts per week with other either endurance or tempo workouts sprinkled around them. If you're interested, I made a video last year. I will post that down below. I talked about how you can best periodize the workouts in this plan depending on how high a volume you do per week, whether you're a low volume athlete, mid volume, or high volume athlete, how you can best periodize these within your training weeks to get the most bang for your buck and perform the best on those workouts. But suffice it to say, I think that for the number of deliverables involved, the 4-week time frame makes more sense. On the flip side of that, however, when you're talking about true periodization and training and creating training blocks, 4 weeks is a little on the light end. Typically, you want to see a training block of anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to see appreciable power gains. So if you're looking to lift up your threshold or lift up your VO2 max, you don't typically see that in the first 4 weeks. Again, if you are on the beginner end of the spectrum, if you're in your first 3 years of cycling or you're just new to structured training, you probably are going to see an accelerated improvement pattern when it comes to that 4-week block. But I think for a lot of people out there who have done some structured training before, you might not see the gains that you would hope to over the course of 4 weeks. You're really going to have to extend that training block out to 6 or 8 weeks to see a power gain. That being said, it doesn't mean you won't have tangible benefits. You just may not see that in terms of power numbers. What you may see change first in those first 4 weeks, maybe your heart rate goes down for those same levels of effort. You might see your RPE go down, so your rate of perceived exertion. Those same efforts at those same power values, while they're still in the proper zones, they might start to feel a little bit easier. You may recover a little bit faster. Your repeatability improves a little bit. Your breathing is more under control. Those are all tangible, beneficial elements of a training plan, but maybe not as satisfying as seeing your FTP go up by 5 to 10 watts or see your 2-minute power go up by 5 to 10 watts. So just understand the limitations that come with the 4-week training block. What I'd like to see in the future with Zwift is perhaps they expand the options for people who want to do an extended Zwift Academy. Maybe do a Zwift Academy and Zwift Academy Plus. So you can make that shorter time frame available for people who want the standard unlocks, but for people who are really focused on training, would really like a nice program built into Zwift to kind of get them motivated to be on the bike for a longer period of time. Add some unlocks, add some enhanced completion badges, whatever that might be. Allow for a longer program, maybe an 8, 10, 12-week block for those more advanced athletes, and you can opt in or opt out as you wish. I think the other downside that may come with the 4-week format is that people who might want to start the academy a little bit later, they don't have that same flexibility. If you were in the academy last year, you didn't really have to start the academy until 2, 3, 4 weeks in. You still had plenty of time to complete it. So maybe if you still wanted to get those rides in outdoors, if you had a nice September season in your area in the Northern Hemisphere, you may have been reticent to come indoors and maybe try to start the program later. This year, they did push the start date out a little bit. Historically, the program has started right around that 1st of September, that first weekend, basically the Monday following, right around Labor Day for people in the United States. They've pushed that out another 10 to 12 days, so it's a little later in the month, but for people who really don't like to come indoors until close to October, November, you really do have to make a decision here. You can't really rush and finish this up. You need to commit to being able to do the workouts within that 4-week window. On balance, I think it's a net positive for the community. While for me as a cyclist and my personal type of riding, I find it to be a step backwards, I do acknowledge for the community as a whole, this is probably a better move for Zwift in the future, and we may see them adjust this time frame. Maybe next year we'll see it more around that middle ground of 6 weeks. And that brings us into the deliverables for this program. As I mentioned, last year you had to complete 10 rides or workouts. This year it's only 8, and I want to highlight some of those key differences. In terms of the core structured workouts that you have to complete for graduation, that number has remained the same. There were 6 workouts last year and 6 workouts this year. I will talk about some of the specificity around those workouts here momentarily, but the biggest key difference I want to highlight right now is that there are now 2 options for every workout, a short version and a long version. And I think that that's a great addition here. A, for the time crunch athlete, and B, I had some criticisms last year that the program is not really designed for the absolute beginner athlete. I had encouraged beginners to try to get into the program and make their way through it, but some of those workouts were a tall ask and a heavy lift for those newer athletes. By shortening some of those difficult workouts from around that 60-minute mark to that 40-minute mark, give or take a couple of minutes, I think that's a better and more achievable time frame for those beginner athletes. So really great for those people to be able to select one or the other within the same energy system or power zone. The next 2 rides here are the baseline and finish line ride. Those requirements have not changed. There have been some key changes to those rides that I'll talk about here momentarily, but you're still required to do one of each to complete the program. Last year, there were a couple of recovery rides. If you were a part of last year's academy, you will know that those were an absolute unmitigated disaster. They were executed extremely poorly. They weren't released at times that people could complete the program in a timely manner. I know for me personally, I think I've completed all of the deliverables except for the last recovery ride within the first 4 weeks, and then I had to wait another week to complete the program, and it was hinging on a recovery ride. They had named both rides the same thing, so you didn't know what recovery ride 1 and recovery ride 2 was. They weren't interchangeable. It was a huge disaster. A lot of feedback from the community that just sucked. They went ahead and they eliminated it this year. The last change is to the pro contender requirement. Last year you had to do 1 bonus workout. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. It's not really a workout as much as it was an assessment in a structured workout form. So you do some kind of pre-fatiguing sets, and then you go into what is a free ride set to measure your power. I believe at that time it was for VO2 max, and that was used on the back end through today's plan. I'll list some information down below as to how you need to connect to a today's plan prepaid premium account to be part of the pro program, but that workout was used to give that final assessment. This year, there are 2 additional workouts. I have not seen specifically what they work out. I looked for them. I wasn't able to find them. However, if I had to guess, there's some changes I'm going to talk about here with the baseline and finish line ride. I think that they've added an assessment. If I had to guess, that second assessment covers more sustained threshold power. So 1 assessment for your VO2 max and anaerobic type of power zones, and then the second one for that sustained, perhaps like a 20-minute test or something to that effect for the pro contenders. You are more than welcome to do them if you are not not a part of the Pro Contender program. They are not workouts with specific benefits to your fitness. They can have some benefit, but that's not what they're designed for. They're designed to assess your power. And in this case, you need to know what to do with that information. You need to know how to evaluate the time frame and what your power level is and what that means for you as an athlete. The program is not going to do that for you. So if you are interested in that type of thing and deep diving into the data, absolutely try out those workouts. But if you don't really know what to do with that, I would maybe skip those workouts and repeat one of the others or focus on something else. So let's talk about the baseline and finish line rides, because I think this is an exciting change from last year. Baseline and finish line rides, irrespective of them being a part of the program for several years, they used to be called segment group rides. People are still caught out and confused by this. And part of it is on Zwift and their execution and the limitations of the platform and to be able to shepherd the riders through those different programs. And some of it is personal responsibility. People just not reading the instructions and they're just too busy rushing in and getting those rides done. So high level, let's talk about what a baseline and finish line ride is. And effectively, they are the exact same thing, but they bookend the program. So the baseline ride is just like it sounds. You get a baseline read on your fitness. I'll talk about how they do that here momentarily. You should be doing that before any of the workouts. And then the finish line ride, after you're done with the 6 workouts, you should be doing it at the very end. And then those 2 identical rides get compared. Zwift will do a lot of the heavy lifting there for you, but you can also do that manually, and you'll be able to see if you've seen some tangible benefit, whether it's an increase in your power or a reduced time to finish a segment, and you'll get some evaluation as to kind of how you stack up against the general Zwift population in your age and gender demographic, things like that, to help you get an assessment of yourself. Now, the mistake that people would make is that they would take these rides like a time trial. They would go in and try to finish the course as fast as they could or race against the other riders on the road, and that is really not the purpose of these rides. The rides are intended to capture your completion of specific segments. So a sprint, a VO2 max, and then more of a sustained threshold level power segment. And by doing it on the road rather than in a structured workout, you have a different level of engagement with the program, a different level of impetus, whether there's other riders on the road or you're trying to beat the PR on the road, any number of things that might help you to elicit a little extra power out of yourself so that you can get a better result. And the only thing measured in those rides were those segments. You could soft pedal, back pedal, or hell, you could stop in between those segments. It didn't matter when you crossed the finish line. The key element of those rides was to be measured in the segments themselves. While Zwift tried their best to describe this in detail in the ride instructions, we have to talk about the least common denominator of the effort people are going to be putting into their rides on Zwift. People don't want to read, they want to turn on their game, and they want to get going. I completely understand that. So this year they've done a lot to the structure here to eliminate the confusion so that they're going to pretty much force people into compliance, and you have to kind of go out of your way to screw this up. So the first thing that they've changed is they've reduced from 2 options to 1. So last year you had 2 route options, one for kind of the standard option and one for the Pro Contender option, or just somebody who's more advanced or more experienced and wanted to do a longer ride. Last year they used Legends of Lava and Climber's Gambit. The sprint and VO2 max efforts were very similar. In fact, the VO2 max effort was identical for both. It was the Titans Grove reverse segment, somewhere between 1 minute and 2.5 minutes, depending on your watts per kilogram, to get up that somewhat steep, punchy climb and get a measurement of your VO2 max level power for that effort. Where they really diverge is with the sustained efforts that they were eliciting by way of the climbs that they performed at the ends of each ride. So with the Legends of Lava, you did the Volcano KOM, which for most people is somewhere between maybe 7 and 20 minutes. And then with the Climber's Gambit, you were completing the route on Epic KOM, which on the very razor's edge might be somewhere around 20 minutes, and for a lot of people closer to 40 minutes to an hour. So it's a much different pacing strategy and a different power execution for both. Neither one is necessarily better than the other, but Zwift felt that for the Pro Contender field that it was more important to get those longer climbs measured. Now for this year they've eliminated that second option, and I think by doing so they've eliminated some confounding variables. Some people may have picked different rides for both their baseline and finish line, and then you'd have to compare apples to oranges, which really didn't work. When they were trying to evaluate a phenotype and compare people against the populations, the population was split between the different rides. They weren't able to get a solid evaluation. So by streamlining into one course, this year being the Legends of Lava only, they were able to make that a lot more straightforward. This is why I suspect that they've moved into that second bonus workout that is required for the Pro Contender field, and why I think that's going to be an assessment for sustained threshold power. It's just replacing this second option for the Pro Contender ride. The next change is a biggie. Last year, I call it self-guided for those rides. Basically, you had to read the instructions and figure it out. A lot of people screwed up the course the first time around, realized their error by either asking around or watching videos like the ones that I had made, and then they had to do the course again, which was kind of a wasted effort. Granted, doing a solid effort on Zwift is never wasted, but in terms of going after the deliverables in the program, you just basically had to repeat a ride when you could have done something different or worked towards something else. This year, they've made some changes where they're going to do on-screen prompts for the segments. This is a huge change, and a lot of people criticized this last year, asking, well, why can't Zwift just add in those on-screen prompts now? They put the different arches up a couple of weeks in, so it's easier to see where the segments start and stop, so why can't they just put the on-screen prompts up there? And the simple answer is that the program wasn't capable of doing this, and people had a hard time understanding this because if you do a group workout, you do see on-screen prompts. What people don't understand is that the group structured workouts are running what is called a ZWO file in the back end. That is the structured workout file that houses the graph, what's being communicated to your trainer, and those on-screen prompts are attached to certain time markers in that file itself. So it knows precisely when to put those on-screen prompts up there. Group workouts, where you're just trying to ride at your own pace and complete a course, do not function like that. In order to have something in the center of your screen in a group ride as of 2021, you had to have some kind of ride lead or beacon manually typing that in. And that would come at different points in time for all of the riders on the road. It really would not have accomplished what people would have needed out of that, not to mention the logistics of getting a ride leader or beacon for every single baseline and finish line ride. They could have had a bot do it, but at that point you're just going to front load all of the instructions into the first 30 seconds to a minute of the ride, and it's still not giving you a good warning as to when the segment is coming. This year, they've done a pretty substantial lift from a coding perspective. They've committed to being able to give riders a prompt as to when the segment is coming up. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to give you a kilometer out, 500 meters out. I have no idea what that looks like because I have not seen it in the real world, but they're committing to have a much better execution and people will not be confused as to where those segments are. So I think, again, they're going to be forcing people into compliance and you have to go out of your way to screw this up. But we will see how the execution goes here in September. The next change they made is that you could use any bike last year. This year, they're forcing everybody to use the same bike, and I think that's going to benefit in a number of ways. Again, it comes to comparing apples to apples. If you're using two different bikes for the baseline and finish line rides, there could be changes to your time and your execution, especially on things like sprints and shorter climbs, where you might be a second or two faster or slower that have nothing to do with your power execution whatsoever. This year, you're going to be locked into the same bike, not only so you're being compared against yourself reliably, but so you can be compared against the general population in Zwift reliably. Everybody has to use the identical bike. This year you have to use the TT bike, which I suspect will be the Canyon Speed Max TT bike. Now you might be wondering, with the climbing that's on Legends of Lava, why on earth would you pick a TT bike? And I understand because it's going to make the climbing times slower. However, the position your avatar takes on the TT bike are much less variable than they are in a road bike. There's a number of different variables that go into whether you're riding up in the hoods, in the low drops, or you're out of the saddle. And there's a lot of differences that come from being on the road bike versus the TT bike. That avatar never drinks. They don't sit up on the hoods. They don't stand as often. So there's going to be a lot much more control over the positions of the avatar, and your position can really impact your speed when it comes to those seconds that you're looking for on some of those different segments. So I think that it's going to be an interesting but important change this year, that everybody's going to be on the same TT bike. And the last change is kind of a minor change. Last year, everybody got a phenotype evaluation. There was an email sent out. It told you what your phenotype is, which was aggressively bad last year. I think everybody that I asked was a sprinter, even when we weren't sprinters. I think some of that shook out as the differences between the options and getting the population in terms of consistent riding. I think that controlling these up here will provide better evaluations of people's phenotypes. But you're going to get the same thing this year. Hopefully the emails will go out reliably this year, and make sure that you check your spam or your junk filters, because you're going to get some valuable information, and sometimes your Zwift emails will come up as marketing emails. But this year, they're going to add in some progress emails. So along the way, you might get some additional emails with some training recommendations, some recovery recommendations that are based around both the program and your phenotypes. I have no idea what that execution will look like. Hopefully they've done some work in the past year to improve on what happened last year, which was a good start and foray, but it certainly wasn't the best. I'm hoping that they're going to be doing a lot better here in 2022. That's pretty much it on baseline and finish line rides. I think most of you who were around last year will be relieved to see some of the streamlining that they've done here for 2022. I do want to talk about workouts briefly, just talk about the different type of workouts that are available here. This is the format for the long version for all of these workouts, and you're going to see there's quite a bit of a divergence from 2021. 2021's workouts were designed around two different training blocks. The first block being focused on VO2 max, and the second block being focused on threshold and sustained power. You'll see here that they've painted these workouts with a much broader brush. You're kind of touching on a number of different energy systems and progressing your way through. You're starting with aerobic, moving into your threshold with some over-unders, some short efforts, some sustained efforts here. Then you're moving into your VO2 max and anaerobic level workouts. Now, from a strict periodization standpoint, I think they've taken a step backwards here. For the best possible adaptations when it comes to a finite training block, you should be really working similar energy systems. So if you're looking to improve threshold, your workouts each week should be around threshold. If you're looking to improve high level power, VO2 max, anaerobic level power, you should be looking to focus your workouts around those ends. Specificity is key. Here you're kind of all over the road progressing your way through. So if you're looking for the best strict periodized plan, this probably isn't the best. That being said, again, for the community at large and getting people introduced, this being an academy for people to learn from, this is not a bad approach. It's introducing you to different types of power systems and how you can work those power systems, and you can make some evaluations for yourself. Where do you really shine? Where do you struggle? Maybe you do really well with these high-level executions of power, but you really have a hard time with sustained efforts. You know out of this 4-week program what you should start working on. It's really making it more of a true academy. I think that they've made a bit of a shift from last year, which might not be the most ideal or pleasing to the competitive or the performance-based cyclists among us who are accustomed to periodized training and are wondering why we've moved back in this direction. Think on balance, I'm going to call that a neutral change, positive for the community, but maybe a little bit on the negative side from the training standpoint. But I think they've done an overall decent job. I will review these in detail. I'll go through that exercise as I do each of these workouts and talk about them with more specificity. What you will see is a shorter version. I do not have copies of the shorter version graphs or images here, but what you can expect out of a shorter version of these workouts is one of two things to happen. One, the intervals get shorter, or two, the interval quantity is reduced. And it's probably gonna be a mix and match for these workouts if I had to guess. For instance, this depleting workout here, which is sustained efforts at your threshold, what I would expect are these yellow threshold blocks to be shortened to a shorter period of times. So if each of these is somewhat like 12 minutes for the long workout, they might be 7 or 8 minutes for the shorter workout. That's where you're gonna carve out that 20 minutes. When you're looking at something like this for FTP short blocks, you might not make these any shorter, but you might do less of them. So instead of 4 each, you might do 2 or 3 each, and that's where you can carve out a little bit of time there as well. So I think they've offered up some good opportunities, especially if you'd like to mix and match. Perhaps you want to do the 1-hour version of the aerobic conditioning workout, but you know that you're not very good at over-unders, so you want to do the shorter 40-minute version of the volcano workout over here. You don't have to do all short or all long. You can mix and match them and get completion credit for the program in any combination you please. Last and most certainly not least is what you're working towards in terms of completing the program. You're going to graduate from the academy and get those unlocks, those little reward hits along the way, and those are pretty typical. They're not much different than years past. At the 2 event mark, which is 25%, you'll get the Zwift Academy socks. You can kind of see some images of what those will look like here. At the 4 event mark, or 50%, you're going to get the purple sweatband that you can see featured over here. At the 75% or the 6 event mark, you're going to get the kit here. And after you complete and graduate from the program, 8 events, 100%, you're going to get the paint scheme for the Canyon Air Road. It is the 2021 Air Road. Canyon has not updated the frame set since that time. I don't know why they just don't eliminate the year here. The caveat there is a lot of people think you unlock the bike. You absolutely do not unlock the bike. You have to purchase the bike from the drop shop. It's a pretty affordable and attainable bike, and it's pretty highly ranked. For those people who are a little bit lower in the levels in terms of your progression, there's a lot of high-end bikes that are level locked. This Canyon Air Road is pretty high performing for the price and the low barrier to entry to get it. You can get yourself a nice purple paint scheme for it by completing the program. So it's a cool set of unlocks. I'm hoping in future years they do a little bit more with with the design. I think the designs have gotten pretty stagnant. It uses the same kind of design elements that they have in years past for the Academy. So hopefully they'll get somebody on board to design. I mean, if you've seen the Canyon SRAM kits for the women, those are wild. Those are really cool. I actually know quite a few men who have bought that kit because it is a very cool design kit. I think they could do a better job in the future, but at the end of the day, most of us wear these jerseys for a day or two and then they move on to something else. But that's really the Academy Road in the nutshell. If you take a look at the website, you'll also see that the Academy Run and the Tri are available. They've made a pretty decent change to the Academy Run. They've actually pushed that out further this year. So it's actually February of 2023 that will start. I think that's a positive change because in years past, all of the academies would overlap a little bit. So for those multi-sport or hybrid athletes who wanted to touch in all of the academies, it created some pretty tough conflicts to be able to get all of those done. Maybe something had to give. By moving the Academy Run out a couple of months, I think that they've offloaded a little bit of that stress and overtraining potential. And I think for those people, especially you pure runners out there, you can definitely run comfortably later in the season than you can ride your bike. And the treadmill is awful. You know, it's orders of magnitude worse than the indoor trainer for cycling. So to force people on the treadmill in October and November, that's a tall ask. But in February, especially for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we don't really need any convincing to stay inside, especially my neck of the woods where I don't know that it's really safe to run outside with all of the snow, ice, melty, nasty bullshit that's going on. So I think they're gonna get a lot more participation in February of 2023 for Zwift Academy Run. If you guys have any questions about the Academy program, I've been doing this since 2016. I can do my best to answer any questions you have down below, or you guys can help each other out or add any additional insights that you don't think that I covered here. If you did get any value out of this video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the thumbs up button, it really does help to put this video out in front of other people to whom it might be beneficial. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see my ugly mug pontificating about all things endurance sport. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. See ya.